I realized the other day that it had been a bit more than 5 years since I started using micro four thirds cameras. And so I thought it'd be good to kind of look at some of the things that I've learned in that time to see if these things might be helpful for you. The way I kind of got started with micro four thirds, I grew up in the photography industry, so I've been around cameras all my life. But I'd gone through a period of about 10 years there where I didn't really do much photography. I had a point and shoot digital camera, but I really wasn't doing any real photography. And I decided I wanted an interchangeable lens, digital camera, something that I could do macro with and longer lenses, and also had a whole lot of vintage lenses from film cameras laying around. So I wanted something I could easily adapt those to. And I started studying, quickly figured out that I wanted a mirrorless camera so I could adapt those vintage lenses, and I wanted to have something that was compact. I'd kind of ended up my film days shooting rangefinder Leicas, both screw mount and M mount Leicas. And so I liked that compact size, and I wanted something that was close to that. And I started studying images on Flickr and online from different camera models and brands to see, what I really liked. And I found that the Micro Four Thirds, the Olympus cameras, had great image quality. I like the size. I like the compactness, of the equipment. I like of course, the mirrorless design. I like some of the features that Olympus had. I think Olympus at that time really was kind of they were kind of the leaders in terms of mirrorless camera designs with image stabilization, a lot of things that other companies didn't have. And so I decided Olympus was the brand I wanted to go with. I started looking at their different models and looking at them online, and one day on eBay, I found this EPL5. I did a video about this EPL5, the first one I had a while back, but it was the EPL5 body with the 14 to 42 kit lens, and the box and the strap and the charger and batteries and manuals, and the whole thing, and the really low shutter count, less than 1,000 exposures, and it was $150. So I bought that. I thought it'd be a good place to get started, and it really was. It was a great little camera. I gifted it to one of my sons later on, but it was just what I needed to get started. So in the past 5 years, I've learned some things that I think might be helpful if you've just recently got into Micro Four Thirds, or you're thinking about getting into Micro Four Thirds, or maybe you've been using these cameras for a little while. Hopefully some of these things that I've learned will be helpful for you. One of the first things that I kind of struggled with is paying attention to too much of the traffic that was online about other brands and other sizes of sensors. And so the first thing I would say is tune out the noise. And I don't mean digital camera noise. I mean all that stuff online, YouTube videos, stuff in print, everything that's telling you that you need to go buy some different camera with a bigger sensor or some other feature in order to be happy in life. It's just not true. I wasted, I can't tell you how many untold hours watching videos and stuff, trying to convince myself that I had made the right choice in cameras, and that I was somehow, trying to, reinforce those decisions I'd made. So I watched all this stuff, and I would get upset because I was like, that's not true. I can do these things with my camera. You say I can't. I don't have shallow enough depth of field, or I don't have enough dynamic range, or I don't have this or that. And that's not, just tune all that noise out. Don't listen to all that stuff. Spend your time doing things that are more productive, like taking pictures and learning to edit pictures and doing things that will help your photography get better. So that's one of the first things I would say is you got to tune out all that noise that's out there. Everyone telling you that you should have done something different. All those people are out there trying to inflate their own self-worth or their own belief that they made the right decisions, and I don't know. There's just a lot of garbage out there. Just tune all that out. Videos that are instructional, that'll tell you how to do things with your camera equipment or how to get better at photography in general, those are great to watch. But just avoid those channels that are just trying to tell you need to go buy some other piece of equipment. That's crazy. So I say I wasted a ton of time doing that. Don't do that. You'll be much happier if you just look at the images that you're creating and say, yes, I'm getting the quality that I want, and this is working for me, and so I made the right decision. Just don't let other people try to influence you in that way. So that's number one, tune out the noise. The second thing that I would tell you that I really have learned from doing this is to learn your equipment. really study it. Download the manuals, read the manuals, study the way you set things up in the camera. If your camera, if it's newer, like my EM5 Mark II, this super control panel, which I can get it with one button press. I can just press one button and I get the super control panel. And here I've got everything I need. I can set my ISO, I can set my image stabilization, my focus points, the type of focus, just all kinds of stuff that, you know, the different modes of the camera can be set. And about 95% of the things you would want to set in your camera are available on that super control panel. And if you have one of the cameras that's not automatically the default menu, there's a lot of videos online about how to find it. It basically has to do with going into your menu and going to the camera settings and going to the display settings, and you can find it. But there's, like I say, there's a lot of videos out there on how to do it. Maybe I should make one someday. But the super control panel is really helpful. But you want to try all the features of your camera. You want to try all the art filters and try all the different shooting modes. And like my EM5 Mark II, amazing little camera. It has things like focus stacking. If I have a macro lens on here, an Olympus macro lens, I can do focus stacking. This has 40 megapixel high res mode where it actually uses the image stabilization mechanism, and it takes, I think it's like 4 images, but it takes a picture and moves the sensor a sub-pixel amount, takes another picture, does that 4 times, and then creates a 40 megapixel high resolution image. And some of these features that are in these cameras are just really amazing. You know, you don't use them all the time. There might be some features you'll try and you go like, I'm never going to need that. And then one day you're going to be in some situation and go, hey, that thing might really help me. And so learn all the features. The other thing is Olympus cameras are really great. You can customize what all the buttons and dials do. You can make them all work the way you want. You can make them, you know, you rotate a dial one direction, it does the same thing. And so I try to make all my cameras work pretty much the same way. So the front roller does the same thing, the back roller does the same thing, certain buttons do the same thing. So when I pick up one of my cameras, it'll function the way I want. But you want to get really familiar with those controls. So when you pick up the camera, it's ready to go. I mean, if you're shooting manual and you want to increase or decrease shutter speed or aperture, you know which way to turn the dial. You're not fumbling around with it. Learn the equipment. I remember as a kid, my dad, like I say, was a commercial photographer. He would get a new camera. I remember him getting a Pentax 6x7. And in the evening, you know, my mom and dad are in their bedroom watching TV in bed, and my mom's watching TV. My dad's sitting there with his Pentax 6x7, playing with it, learning everything, whining. And if you've ever heard a Pentax 6x7, it's like a kerchunk every time you take a picture. Pretty soon my mom's like, would you stop that? I'm trying to watch, you know. But my dad would devote time to just learning the camera. So when he's out in the field shooting pictures, he doesn't have to think about how to set something. It's just automatic. He knows it. So learning your equipment, and this doesn't really matter what brand or you know, format of camera you have, whether it's digital or film or anything. Learning your camera equipment will help you shoot more efficiently when you're out in the field, and especially if you're trying to shoot something professional. I mean, if you were shooting at a wedding and you're like, how do I change my exposure? That's going to, you know, be kind of sad. So learn that equipment, learn how to set everything. The other thing I would say is that you need to be able to look at the settings in your camera, you know, all the different things that are displayed, or if you have your super control panel up, be able to look at that thing at a glance and say, yes, everything's set right. I'm in the right mode. I've got the right ISO. I've got my, you know, my resolution set. I've got, you know, all these different things that are on that. But if you study that enough, you get to where just at a glance you can see if something's set wrong. And so it's real important, you know. Sometimes, I don't know, I'll shoot something with a camera and I'll set something a little off, and then I'll forget to set it back, and I'll put the camera in the bag, and then I come back later on to go to shoot something else, and I grab the camera and it's not set the way it needs to be. So I try to make sure that anytime I quit using a camera that I put it back to my own kind of personal default settings and make sure it's set so that the next time I grab it, I know how it's going to be set. I don't have to think about, where did I leave this? You know, because it's real easy for things to get changed, or you leave them in a different setting. So come up with your own kind of default settings that you set the camera to, and make sure that anytime you are finished using the camera that you set it back to those default settings. That'll be real helpful too. The next thing I would say, if you've embraced Micro Four Thirds cameras, Olympus cameras, is try vintage lenses. If you haven't already started shooting vintage lenses on your mirrorless camera, your Micro Four Thirds camera, you're in for a real treat. these lenses can produce images that your modern lenses can't do. Modern lenses create, super high contrast, very clean, almost, some say almost clinical looking images. And there's times when I want that. If I'm shooting macro, I want just super sharpness, brilliant color, no noise. I want it just, that's what I want with typical macro stuff. Every now and then, though, I'm shooting maybe not macro, but close-up of flowers and things, and I don't want things to be a little bit different. This lens is an old, I've done a video on it. It's an old Pentacon 50mm f1.8. And this lens, especially if you shoot it wide open, has just some amazing artistic effects. It's kind of funny, back in my film days, I thought this was junk. I'm like, who would want this? It's not that great a lens, Why would you want that on your camera? But now with digital cameras, these lenses that some of them were really good and now are still good, but some of them weren't so great and now are considered art lenses. But a lot of these lenses, you can get this Pentacon for $25, $30 on eBay all day long. And there's other lenses, if you've looked at vintage lenses much, you've seen all the Helios lenses that are highly thought of for their, out of focus backgrounds, and some of the Pentax, Asahi Pentax Takumar lenses, the 55mm f1.4 Super Takumars are known for just amazing image quality. And I think I did a video on a 55mm f2 Super Multi-Coated Takumar, SMC Takumar. It's a fantastic lens. And so there's a whole range of lenses that you can get in vintage they're super cheap. And you might and I've mentioned this in some of my videos about using vintage lenses, you might want to try out a focal length that you, before you, put down a lot of money on an expensive digital lens, you might want to try one in analog that you can get a lot cheaper and see if that focal length really works for you. I happen to have a 300mm f4 Nikkor. It's an old AI film camera lens, and I promise you it's not as good as the latest Olympus 300mm. No, but it is very sharp and it's nice, and for a lot of what I do, it's enough. It's good enough, and so I like the image quality it gets. And it's the vintage lenses will give you, like I say, some options that you can't get with modern digital glass. I think you'll find that if you try some vintage lenses, you'll find some ways to do some things in an artistic fashion that are just really extraordinary. So that would be the next thing I would say, is try some vintage lenses. They're available really inexpensively. And I've talked about this in some videos I have about using vintage lenses. The adapters are available very inexpensive. You can get them on Amazon, you can get them on eBay. I use a lot of this brand. It's called Fotasy, F-O-T-A-S-Y, and they're reasonably well made, and they're inexpensive. A lot of these are somewhere between $10 and maybe $15 or $20, and you can get them for Canon, Nikon, Olympus, Minolta, Exacta, just about any vintage lens you can think of. There's an adapter for it. And like I say, they're very inexpensive. And they're inexpensive enough that I like to buy an adapter for each lens. I mean, rather than having to move adapters around, it's easier just to put the adapter on the lens, leave it there, then it's ready to go all the time. And there's a few adapters like Exacta mount lenses. I only have a couple, and I don't use them that much, so I just have one. But if you've got several, Pentax or Takumar screw mount lenses, M42 mount lenses, having several of these mounts where you can put them on lenses is really handy. Anyway, so vintage lenses, there's lots of videos. I have some on there. Other people have videos on using vintage lenses. Definitely something you want to try out. If you haven't ever used vintage lenses, that's definitely something you want to check out. The next thing I would say is buy the equipment, the cameras and lenses that you can afford. And this is one of the great things about Micro Four Thirds, is the cameras and the lenses are very affordable compared to some of the other brands. Whether you're buying new or used, there's just some great deals out there. I think like this little 40 to 150, and this is their inexpensive kit lens version. I've done a video on this. It's actually a great lens, super sharp, very inexpensive. You can get these. I've seen them on sale as cheap as $99. I think normally they're around $150. And but buy what you can afford. If you can't afford the most expensive high dollar lenses, it's great if you want to save up for those. I kind of have this thing where I have probably too many hobbies going on at once, and I love vintage musical instruments, guitars and ukuleles and stuff, and so I probably spend more money on some of those than I do on camera lenses. But you want to buy what you can afford, and I think you'll find that, especially with Olympus and even the Panasonic lenses, there's some fantastic lenses. Whether you call them kit lenses or just they're inexpensive lenses, there's some fantastic lenses available at very reasonable prices, and there's no reason to shy away from most of them. I haven't found any of their inexpensive lenses from Olympus that I've been disappointed in. And Panasonic, there's some good ones too. This 20mm f1.7 is not a very expensive lens, especially on the used market, and it's amazing optical quality, just super sharp lens. It's a great focal length for micro four thirds. So yeah, buy the cameras and lenses you can afford. Micro four thirds gives you some options. If you're kind of on a budget and you're getting started and you really want to try a longer focal length or maybe a macro lens or something, I use the Olympus 30mm macro. I have a vintage Nikon 55mm f3.5 micro Nikkor that I use quite a bit, and so I haven't purchased the 60mm Olympus macro. I keep telling myself maybe I should someday. It's obviously a really great lens, but that micro Nikkor is also a great lens, and though it's manual focus, it's really kind of hard to beat. But I did buy the 30mm. It was pretty inexpensive. I found it on sale on a I don't know, it was on sale on Amazon, and it was pretty affordable, and so I went ahead and bought it. And every now and then on Amazon you can find things that have coupons or significant discounts, and I forget what it was exactly, but it was a lot less expensive than it normally is. I think I paid like $150 for it, where they're normally about $2 or $2.25, something like that. But I wasn't afraid to buy that lens, even after reading some reviews. And there's some people that have some things they didn't like about it, like at high magnification you're really close to your subject. I don't shoot a lot of bugs, so that wasn't a problem. But everything I have purchased, an inexpensive lens from Olympus or Panasonic, has been fantastic. So don't be afraid to try out some of their lower end lenses. If those are what you can afford, if you can afford the nicest, most expensive lenses, go for broke, sure. But if you're getting started and you're kind of on a budget, and these days with inflation, everyone kind of has to be on something of a budget, or everyone has to. So if one of their lower end lenses is what you can afford, don't be afraid to try it out. I think you'll find that the lens is probably able of creating much better images than you would imagine. And if you think about some of the world's most famous images, obviously a lot of them taken with very old cameras that didn't have that great a lens or camera, some of the greatest pictures didn't rely on super high image quality to become a great picture. A lot of it just has to do with the subject content, composition, things like that. And so you can make great images with inexpensive lenses or vintage lenses. You really don't have to go crazy and buy expensive lenses. Now, if you're a professional and you're going to shoot weddings, or you're shooting landscapes professionally or wildlife professionally or something like that, yes, buy the equipment that you need to perform as you need for your business. But if you're just a hobbyist like me and you just want to create some images that you like, definitely you want to try out some of the less expensive lenses if those are what you can afford. So that's the next thing, is don't go crazy. Don't go broke trying to buy equipment. And again, tune out some of that noise online and buy the equipment that you can afford and that will allow you to do the photography you need to do. So the last thing that I would say that I've learned that I think is might be helpful is to embrace the look of micro four thirds. Now, what does that mean? So, each format of digital camera, whether you're shooting full frame or APS-C or micro four thirds, they all have a little bit different look. And, whether that's a combination of depth of field and dynamic range and sensor noise and whatever, micro four thirds has its own look. And the micro four thirds, if you use a low ISO and you're shooting with modern lenses, you can get those absolutely low noise, super sharp, crisp digital images like you get with any brand. You can do that. And there's times I want that look. But Micro Four Thirds also has the advantage, I think, of being more able to emulate a film look than any of the other sizes of sensor sizes. If you want to emulate a film look, and this seems to be a growing popular thing with your digital camera, it's pretty easy to do with Micro Four Thirds. Again, I have a video about that. If you go back through my videos, you'll find it. But if you were to run your ISO up a little bit and throw on a vintage lens, you can make images that very closely emulate a film look. And so you can get some artistic effects with Micro Four Thirds that I think you'd struggle. I mean, it's not that you couldn't do it with other formats, but I think you might struggle more than you will with Micro Four Thirds. So embrace the look of Micro Four Thirds images. There's, like I say, I used to shoot Leicas, rangefinder film cameras. And a lot of people that shoot Leicas will tell you that Leicas, there's a Leica look. And until you've shot rangefinder Leica cameras, you would probably argue that point. But to this day, I can look at a black and white or even a color film image and say, that looks like it was shot with a Leica. It has that feel. One of the point and shoot cameras that I bought when I was just shooting point and shoot cameras, and I was traveling all over the country and I needed something I could travel with me, is I bought a little Panasonic Lumix point and shoot camera, but it had a Leica lens. And I kind of wondered, before I bought it, will this have that Leica look? And sure enough, as I took pictures with it, it did. And Leica's lens philosophy, design philosophy, is a little different than some other companies. As I used to read about Leica lens design, they would actually, a lot of companies would try to focus on how much resolution they could get out of a lens. And Leica's philosophy was that you get the maximum amount of contrast from the lens, and the resolution will be there if you get the contrast. And so they had a little bit different design philosophy than some of the other makers. Consequently, their lenses had a different look. And like I say, anyone that has shot Leicas extensively will tell you that there is a Leica look, and that it's something that once you've been around it and experienced it, you can spot it. And I'll probably be a little more hard-pressed to do it now since I haven't shot Leica film cameras in a while. I do have one of my vintage lenses is a Leitz 35mm f3.5 Sumeron, and I shoot it on actually a Canon rangefinder film camera, and its images have that look. And even if I put that lens on one of my digital cameras, those images have that look, that Leica look. So, Micro Four Thirds, the Olympus lenses or Panasonic lenses, they have their own look, and it's based on, like I say, the amount of depth of field, the digital noise or the amount of noise from the sensor, the amount of dynamic range. All these things factor in together and create a look. If you've ever shot medium format or large format images, you can spot an image shot on a 4x5 camera or an 8x10 camera, and you can just spot it right away and tell someone it's shot on a large format. Similarly, once you shoot these cameras enough, you'll get to where you can recognize an image has that look. And like I say, the Micro Four Thirds, to me, all sensors can have some noise if you crank the ISO up high enough. And some complain that Micro Four Thirds has more noise than others because of the size of the sensor. And maybe that's true. But what I also know is true is that the noise that can be created, if you do it intentionally especially, that the noise that's created looks very similar to film grain. And I think more so than maybe noise from some of the other formats. And that combined with Olympus's color science and the way they process images in the camera, these Olympus cameras to me have a look that I really like. And maybe it's because I'm an old film photographer, but I like the look that these images have. And so I would say embrace the look. If you've gone down the road of choosing Micro Four Thirds, you probably did it for, like me, a number of different reasons. One of the things that I discovered after I had started shooting Micro Four Thirds is that those images had a look that was unique and that I really liked. So I would say that, that embrace the look of images, the style of images that you get from Micro Four Thirds. And don't, again, you're going to have those detractors that say, oh, your image has this or it's that and it's not good enough and you should have more depth or less depth of field or more dynamic range or more whatever. Just don't listen to all that. the Micro Four Thirds creates a really unique look of image, and I think it's really fantastic. And all these things that combine together make a look that I believe is just very desirable. I like the way the Micro Four Thirds images look. So this kind of goes back to the very first thing: tune out all that other noise, learn to use your stuff, learn to love the images you get, because these cameras will produce just fantastic images. I have yet to take a picture that I said, man, I wish I had a bigger sensor. I could have done a better job with this image. I have yet to make that happen. Maybe it will someday. Haven't run into it yet. But I have just really enjoyed using the Micro Four Thirds cameras. They've given me all the quality that I want and a unique look. I'm not the kind of guy that does the same thing as everyone else. If you knew me personally, you'd know that I don't drive the same kind of cars that other people drive, and I don't buy the same kind of cameras that other people buy, and a lot of things that I do in my life, I tend to go down a different path than the majority of people. It's just the way I am. And that's, to me, one of the things I really like is that I'm not just doing the same thing that the majority of people are doing, that my images are going to have a unique look to them that, you know, other people aren't going to have. So anyway, embrace the look of Micro Four Thirds, and I think you'll be a lot happier. Well, that's all I really have for today. I hope some of that was kind of interesting or helpful for you. If you've been shooting Micro Four Thirds for a while and you have some other things that you'd like to share, you know, please do leave me a comment. I always love hearing from you. If you have questions, also please don't hesitate to leave me a comment. I've really enjoyed using Micro Four Thirds for the past year. I don't see any reason I would want to change. I may upgrade to a newer model Olympus or maybe Panasonic camera. I've actually been thinking maybe about trying out one of the Panasonic cameras just to try it out. But I have to tell you, I'm really in love with the color science of Olympus cameras. So I don't know. I'll just have to give it a try and see. But I've really come to love shooting Micro Four Thirds for all the reasons that I bought it in the first place: for the image quality, for the size and weight, and the compactness, and the affordability, and all those things. I still, to this day, really love the system. And I think if you kind of look at some of these things, you'll find that if you've chosen Micro Four Thirds, you've chosen the right path. Well, like I say, I hope this has been helpful. If you have any thoughts or comments, please, don't hesitate to leave me a comment. And as always, thanks for watching.